Then February, I showed how to use the combine framework to separate out the model logic from the view logic and make your code more maintainable and easier to understand. And then next month in April, I'm going to have another talk on using combine to improve that that same project I've been working through. But this month we've got Abe talking about how you can use combine together with diffable data source, and instead of Swift UI, you can use UIKit. So I'll let him take over.
Yeah. So my name's Abe. I don't know if I've met everyone. I'm an iOS developer at Thoughtbot. I've been there for 2 months now. It's my Twitter handle if you guys want to follow me on Twitter. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about. Can I just play this? Oh, okay, cool. So I'm going to talk about diffable data source. Just a quick intro to it. I'm sure everyone knows about Combine or have heard a lot about it. But the most underrated new framework right now is diffable data source. A lot of people haven't heard about it, but it does magic, honestly. So basically what it does, it automatically determines the difference between old data and new data and applies animations to it. And that's it. You just have to make a snapshot and then connect it. So there's no more having to do perform batch update, which that gets a little sticky sometimes, because you have to update at a specific row and specific section, and that's never perfect. And there's always that error when the index is out of range. Sometimes everyone gets that every single time, and you won't really do that because this is more data driven than anything else.
Is the diffable data source part of Combine?
No, it's not part of the Combine. It's another framework. I forgot to mention this. So there's a starter project that if anyone wants to follow along while I do this, you can go on GitHub and get the starter project. It'll be at the end of the slides too if you guys can't read fast enough. And the final project is in the meetup link.
So that's, what is that for?
This is the starter project.
So
it's just an empty.
Okay.
If anyone wants to follow along, I
Cool.
should have added this in the
Blackjack, that was starter. Cool.
But yes. So this is the current state of things. You have your collection view delegate on your view controller, and you tell the view you say how many rows you want in a specific section. You also say how many sections, and then you in self-format you configure your style to however you want it. This is very traditional, and so how this basically works is you have a controller and you have the UI, right? And the UI the controller tells the UI how many sections it wants, and that's fine. That's great that we could end it there. But then there's web services, they sneak in and the data updates. So now we have to update our UI and stuff, and then the controller tells the UI, when the data changes, and this is where most of things gets pretty messy, where you use a dit set on the array that you're using, and then you do reload data on your collection view, or you do some other methods to make some kind of crazy callback thing. And then there's also this that this is when I usually quit. When this is usually common when you're using core data or something that automatically updates it, and it's never that good, right?
Hey, none of us here have ever seen that. What are you doing?
Well, you'll see it soon.
What 1,000 times?
Yeah. So then diffable data, and you configure the snapshot with the sections and the items that you want, and you just apply that snapshot to the data source, and that's pretty much it. So let's look at some code for that, because you could do slides forever but never really get anything right. So here is the starter project. If anyone downloaded, the link is here. If anyone wants to look at it. So it's just an empty project. You don't have to worry about the view controller. It's all pretty set up. So let's look at our model. So we're gonna do a blackjack app right now, right? So we're gonna call the deck of cards API, and we're gonna just receive a random card from the API, right? So this is making it a little more realistic, adding more network present stuff instead of just having a static in-memory array of deck of cards, right? So cards, in cards, right? We're gonna go in and we're gonna make the card model. And I, of course, am not gonna do live coding. I'm gonna use code snippets. A lot easier. This is the card. I think it need foundations here for UID. Cards it needs to be hashable because that's going to be our item for our snapshot, and it also needs to be codable because we're going to get that from the web. And it's going to have points. Points are going to be a calculated variable where it gets the value, the card's value, and tries to make it an integer. And if not, you're going to get nil, and it's going to be 10 because that means it's going to be a face card, right? Which are with 10, and these are just the coding key where we specify what we actually want to get in code. And since it's hashable, it also conforms to equatable, so we need...
What about ace? Or aces?
Yeah, ace is 10, right?
In
Okay,
blackjack
I'm
is
not a
11.
blackjack expert.
It's 11, but
It's 11, okay. Well, so it's also equatable, so you do the equatable with it, and this is the hasher with the end is gonna have and just get the total from that. And deal to map our data, so it's not really gonna be like a main model, but it's gonna be useful. And that's pretty much it for the model layer. Hands, cards, and that's it, right? So now on the view controller, right? So we have a blank view controller. We need to set up our differable data source, right? Traditionally, we would, make the collection view delegate equal to self, and then make an extension for the collection view delegate. But we're going to use data source. So just for preferences, I'm just going to use a type alias for this because it, it's a little messy. Snapshot, right? Snapshot is going to be of UI, differable data source, and it's going to take in a section which we need to create as an enum of section, and we're going to have one section in this, so we could just do one case for main, right? So it's going to, and also enums are automatically hashable, so that's why they don't, you have to conform to hashable or anything. So it's going to take in a generic section and a card. So that's going to be our data source type alias, and we're going to have another.
In your completed code, the name of that variable, the name of the type alias is data source.
Oh my god.
Not.
Sorry. Oh my god. Sorry.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like the new one better.
Yeah, data source. Okay, and then this is going to be snapshot. Right, for snapshot, it's ns diffable snapshot, and it's going to be the same as data source, same generic types, card, right? So just making things easier. Or this is just preferences, but you don't do this. So now we need a data source, which is going to be that. Let me make it, camel case there for this people. Data source, which is going to be of type data source, right? And it's just I have to do that. And then we need, our hand. We just have an instance of hand here. That's going to be our hand. And that's pretty much it, right? So now with data source, you need pretty much two methods. You need a method to configure the data source, and you need a method to update the data source, right? So to configure the data source, we're going to have a method called setup data source, and this method setup data source, it's inside the closure of this method. It configures a cell, and this is something you would see similar to like cell for ROAT, or cell for ROAT, where you configure the cell and then do that, add all the stuff to it, and then return the cell at the end. But this is it. So now of course you call this add viewed load, and the second method you need for this is the update method, where you would update the hand, right? And this update method accepts a list of cards, and then it creates a snapshot, and then from that snapshot it appends a section, which is just main. You could do as many sections as you want, and then it appends items to that, which is the cards that came in, and then it applies it to the data source, and like that's pretty much it. That's all it takes for it, and everything will work. But we have no data, so we gotta get that data. We're going to go to the dealer services. Just from the sound like a car dealership. So inside the dealer services, we're going to make a dealer service structure, and this is going to have two methods. A method where it gets a card from a new deck, and another one where it just gets a card from the current deck. So this is where the API dependence comes in, because when you do have a deck ID, you pass that into the current deck, and then it gets the current deck. But when you don't, you get a new deck. So that's pretty much what that does. So so with the new deck, we're going to have what was it called? Deal from new deck. So this is going to deal from the new deck, and let me just get the other method in there so it doesn't stop yelling at me. Deal from deck, right? So also need to import combine here. So yeah, so this uses combined, and what's wrong with it? Foundations, yeah. So now what this does is when you call a service to deal from a new deck, it goes to the new deck endpoint, and then this URL session task publisher is an extension. It's Combine's extension on URL session. So that returns a publisher, and then in that publisher you map the data, and you use your traditional decode. So, but this makes Combine comes with a custom one that you just put in your thing, and it just decodes it for yourself. And then you flat map that into. So these are operators on Combine, for if anyone's not too familiar with Combine. So these are operators that just manipulate your incoming data from your publisher. So then you flat map that into this other method, and that returns any publisher with generic deal and error, and then that you map the error. We're not going to do error handling here, but then you map that and then decode that through. We're using deal, which is the intermediate model, and we do erase any publisher. So that erase any publisher, it basically erases like the publisher that's kind of wrapping the publisher. So you get just the publisher itself. So the receiving publisher or like subscription doesn't really need to like know of like the type that it's using. So that's pretty much what that does. And that's it for the networking part. So then we're going to need to make a deal method to actually get the stuff. So then this is, we need to make subscription, of course. So we can do our subscription here. Is equal to any cancelable. Any cancelable is basically, should I import mine? So any cancelable is basically if anyone is familiar with like RX Swift or any other reactive kind of paradigm where it's like similar to like a disposable where the subscription like gets held and gets disposed whenever. So like commonly you would cancel the subscription like when you deinitialize your view controller, so like in the deinit method or anywhere else, just like a segue. So yeah, so this you create a publisher here, and this publisher, it checks if the hands cards array is empty, and if not, you call deal from new deck, and if it is, you deal from new deck, and if it's not, you deal from a deck with given the hand's current deck ID, and so this receives two completion. One completion is a failure, which I'm just printing out the error right now, but you can do custom error handling there. Do some kind of result type if you want, and then in the received value object, you assign the object's deck ID to the hand's deck ID, and then you append that object's card, like because you get an array object, so you append the first one into the card's hand, your hand's cards array, and then you update the hand with your hand's cards, which is our diffable data source method here, where you just update things, right? And then this update titles it's a method that acts on the main thread just to update the UI stuff, because everything here is asynchronous, so you gotta dispatch into the main thread and update all the UI stuff, like button titles and everything. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing left is to call the method in your IB action. So you would say, I guess you say if, first you just say deal, right? You just call it deal method. But then you say if the hands cards no, not cards score, that if it's greater than or equal to 21, then you would erase the hands cards, just remove all the elements in the cards, and then that would make it start over, because it would be empty, and then you would get, and that's pretty much it. That's all it takes. So let's run this. Let's see if we get it first try. Usually it's never the case, but oh, cool, we got it. And then you deal. You get a card, and then you deal again. You get another card, and then you deal. Oh, 21 the first try. Wow. Yeah. So then it's 21.
Can we see all the code?
That was all the code. Yeah. That was all of it. It's like how many lines? Like less than 100 lines there. And yeah, and then if it's 21, it starts over because they erased it, and then you just keep trying again. Yeah, it's slow right now because of the network, but yeah, that's pretty much it with the full data source and using the mind. Yeah. Any questions? Oh, yes.
Yeah, back in the dealer service,
Mm-hmm.
if it's a new deck, it would call in the fourth step of flat map, it would call the deal from deck, Does that mean you would go through 2 decode steps?
If it's a new deck, yeah, it's gonna go through 2.
2 decode steps?
Yeah, it's gonna go through 2.
It's not necessary, but it would
It's,
still work, right?
yeah, it'll still work. This is not the best
Alright.
implementation, but it would still work. And if it's not, it just gives it the correct ID.
All right, thank you.
But yeah, there's a better way to do it, definitely. Anyone else?
I have a question. So why do we need to call flat map? I thought that flat map was when you were getting, when we were getting publishers, like when the admitted values were publishers, and then flat map would just make it a single publisher.
Yeah, that's
With
what
map.
flat map does. Flat map does return a publisher. So it returns a flat map publisher now.
Yeah, but wouldn't, I mean, data is not, it's not a publisher, right? So wouldn't map be enough there instead of flat map?
No, because flat map you need to return a publisher. Map just returns data.
No, I think it's a publisher of data.
Publisher of data. Yeah.
I mean, can you try doing
Just using
that?
map.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I convert type any to type?
Oh, but within there, it's because you're returning a
Yeah.
publisher in there.
Yeah.
That's the weird stuff.
Oh, you're returning a publisher in there, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got it.
So just everything just like returns. There's no real like state
And
here.
also, is it true that is that return extra? Can you remove the return there?
Which return?
And
Oh.
that one line that you have in
Line 20?
This?
in 20, yeah.
No, line
Oh, removing the return? Yeah, you can remove the return. With the new Swift, you don't have to have return because it's one line. But yeah, you can have that as well. That works. Yeah. Just, yeah, that's pretty much it. This is style, basically just regular animated, self-identifying convert scripting protocol just to make things more type safe. That's where like this comes from.
So are there any other animation options?
Yeah, you can, I think you can choose, like, but it picks like the best animation for you. Yeah, it picks the best animation for you. I'm not sure if like you can like, I haven't gone too deep into the animation estimation, but it usually just chooses the best one for you, and it's definitely like the best one. So sometimes it's a phase, sometimes it's so and you can choose it to animate or not if you want, which is what the Boolean is on there, where you can just set true or false. But yeah, it's a lot simpler than the traditional way of using collection view, data source, and self-rel add and everything. It's just a lot more readable and data-driven than anything else. Yeah.
Cool.
So is anyone thinking of using this in their current projects?
Oh, can't wait. It's iOS 13, right?
Yeah, it's iOS 13. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of weird, like how like no one really like talked about this framework. There was just all this. I guess it was overshadowed by Swift UI and Combine and everything, and it's like some incredible UI kit advancements that like are just need to be talked about. Yeah.
Has anyone else tried this, specifically with an NS fetched results controller?
I'm sure it would make it easier.
It's in the WWDC video.
Oh, they use NS fetch result control?
Yeah. It's way simpler though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. But you don't have to have all those methods.
Yeah, you can lose all that boilerplate code.
Yeah.
And you don't need the begin and end updates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the worst part of it is it's a lot of boilerplate code and it's not straightforward exactly what the code is supposed to be.
Exactly.
And then it usually works, you just, sometimes it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
it's like all three of those things together make it really painful
Yes.
thing to debug.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, if there's any other questions? Alright. Yeah, so if you wanna download the project, it's on the meetup page, and yeah, thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you. Cool, and I will include a link to that in the email recap as well.
Perfect.
Anyone have any projects or things they're working on right now?
I'm looking for a job, so if anybody wants my resume to hire or to just give me feedback on how bad the resume looks like. I have a full stack.
I'll take a look.
Oh, thank you.
My company is often hiring.
Where do you work now?
Still certificate goal.
Okay, yeah. I remember that.
You get certificate? Get certificate?
Mhm.
Oh, cool. That's a cool place. If you're looking for a job, you can. Actually, yeah.
So, Abe, did you know about this deck of cards API before you started the project, or you just stumbled on it somehow?
Yeah, I just stumbled onto it, yeah. It didn't, the cards that you guys didn't like, feel my, it's a quick, yeah, you should check it out if you wanna do like a deck of cards app.
Yeah.
It's, there's some pretty good limitations. You could like, I was thinking of an idea where you can have the deck, the deck ID and just be able to share that deck ID with another person, and you guys can play with the same deck basically, and like deal from that and just have like real-time updates. Like, that'd be an interesting project.
Yeah.
Did you see any other like related? Was there like a solitaire API or something, or
No, I didn't.
didn't see any
Yeah,
related ones?
This is the first one I searched out. So have you guys used like code snippets for presentations?
No, I don't.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like just to make code snippets, like pretty easy. You just highlight your code and then like make a snippet, and then you can put like custom documentation in it. So it makes it like a lot easier for like presenting.
Yeah,
Like
that works really nice.
like coding.
And you could name the code snippets?
Yeah, you can name
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I hadn't run into that.
You can have like a custom command to.
Yeah.
things on top.
Put placeholders in it too, right?
Yeah. Like something.
And then how do you access that code snippet once you name it? The default name of my code snippet, you would name it something.
Yeah.
Just start
Yeah.
typing it.
That's it,
and
yeah.
it will
Okay.
automatically-
Cool, yeah, just put a default name. And you can put the completion on it, so whatever you
Oh,
type.
Okay.
Yeah, so what you would put in type, yeah, so like you put like $,
Yeah.
whatever the function is.
Okay.
Yeah,
So then so I'm done in there.
yeah.
I just say, $.
There's a code snippet.
Where is it at? There it is, right there.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm running that. Pretty cool.
So if I wanna make that a snippet,
Yeah, so right click.
oh, really? I never go that far down.
Yeah.
I have a question. You use this protocol, self-identifying. I've never seen this before, so you set a get, and it's just their user identifier for this. Where are you using this?
Just look, I don't have to type in like the reuse identifier, you know, because usually the reuse identifier matches the class name.
Yeah.
So I make a protocol that returns the reuse identifier as self, which is the class.
So you use it based on the string, the
Yeah,
word typos.
yeah, to avoid typos.
Right, cool, yeah, that's good. That's cool.
Looks good. I don't know anyone that's hiring at the moment, but I would definitely give you an interview if I was. Yeah.
Hi, so I'm Paul Griffiths. I work in the area doing IT consulting, security, basically. And I'm looking to connect with someone who does application design work, maybe for some short-term contracting. Any of you know anyone, if you could have them talk to me, appreciate it.
We talk about like UI, UX.
Yeah, yeah.
Visual design. Visual design.
Cool, cool.
Or just get with me and take a card and maybe
Yeah.
follow up later. Thanks.
Cool, cool. What are you interested in?
I'm not a coder actually, so all this just kind of went over my head. I'm a Jamf Pro architect and admin, but I'm traveling, so I thought I'd check out what you guys do.
Cool.
So for business needs a Jamf admin or architect.
What is that?
That's what I do.
What is that?
This is the equivalent of like SCCM for Mac environments.
I don't
So
know what that is.
Microsoft SCCM,
No.
like system management.
Okay.
So it manages Apple's on networks.
Okay.
But I do custom build outs and stuff. So, yeah.
Cool.
I'm probably the oddball on this room right now.
Well, there's always lots of people interested in app development that aren't in it every day.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Cool.
Yeah.
Sure, gives it away.
Yeah, I am wearing the local diner t-shirt.
Nice.
But yeah,
Cool. Well, welcome here.
thank you. Yeah, it's an awesome city.
Yeah, not bad weather this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great today.
Monsoon tonight.
Yeah, it's gonna start raining. 3 a.m. according to my weather. Yep.
It's alright, it's 38 degrees in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I'm happy here.
Have you been here for summer?
No, but I've heard.
Come back in a year, let me know.
It's hot, but I'll take it. I'll
Yeah,
take it.
I used to live in San Diego. So.
Okay.
Oh, that's 75 degrees
Every day, yeah. And there's like 3 weeks where you want an air conditioner, so, yeah.
Wow.
But I heard it gets pretty bad down here
Yeah,
for like months.
yes.
Yeah.
So Says the Canadian.
It's no worse than being in New Jersey in the winter, though, I don't think.
Well, some of this here are
It's
way
7
worse.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we have it for, how long you guys have been in summer?
Sorry?
How long are your, like, high temperatures?
3 months.
I mean, and there's usually some kind of relief.
End of May.
Yeah.
Last year was the end of May till the middle of October.
About 3 months, last year was long.
Yeah, that's all.
It was bad.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll
But that's
take
why
the
I'm
heat
here.
over that
Yeah,
winter.
that's
why I'm here.
Yeah.
You don't have to shovel hot.
Yeah. That's very true.
At least you can dress for winter.
You can just be in a pool.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
springs can take any temperature. Cool.
I have a question. I don't know if anybody has experience with this. I have my work project, I have changes to the project, that PXB project file, and when I try to merge,
Yeah.
everything goes nuts. Do you have any tips on how to deal with changes? So I had a
Yeah.
bunch of files I had to delete, so the project file got updated, and it's just going nuts.
Do you
Yes.
Git? Like, Git, is there a Git ignore?
Well, you can't ignore it because you're making changes to it, right?
Yeah,
Because I
so-
deleted a bunch of files.
So actually, what the best solution that I've found is to, so the issue is that the the PBX file is an XML file and it doesn't
You can't
follow
read
like
it.
usual coding practices. So as Xcode will just like rearrange stuff however it wants, but it keeps track of it with identifiers. And so you can actually there's you have to look up exactly which file it is, but there's a Git preferences file you can add to your project that tells Git to just there's a conflict, just take both things, and if you do that, that actually Xcode is still able, like, it's basically gonna result in some extra data being in that file, but Xcode can deal with
It
that no
knows
problem.
what to do.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's like Git merge union is kind of what you want to look up.
Okay.
But that
Just add everything.
yeah, so whenever there's a conflict, it just takes both the before and the after. And I've been using that for 5 years and never had any negative consequences.
Let me write this down.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
That's a great hack.
Well, what I do is I go into the file and see if I erase it or not, if I know it.
Yeah.
If I do, I just.
Well, there's
remove it.
there's the parts where you can read it and it makes sense, you're like, okay, but then there's a bunch of gibberish, like I
Yeah.
think what he was saying, that you can't, right?
It makes sense of it.
And so, yeah, if you do the Git merge union, it takes both when there's a conflict and that. And then Xcode, I think, kind of cleans it up too. So like next time you open an Xcode or you make edits in it, I think it's I don't know, it works.
I had to go back to like the commit before that, like, okay, never mind, let's start here, but I'll do that next time. Alright, thank you.
You're welcome. Cool. And I think that was very helpful. I think some other people learned something as well.
Yeah.
Good question. Good question. Does anyone have any topics they'd like covered in a future talk? Anything you're interested in you'd like to have me tackle?
UI testing.
UI testing. Okay.
Mockups.
Yeah, I could do that.
You're gonna hold out for a more interesting
Yeah.
request.
You should talk about property wrappers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Property reference
That's-
are.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, definitely. Property, so kind of the high level overview for anyone who's not heard of property wrappers. It's a new thing with, I think, Swift 5, but kind of came out with WWDC. I think it's Swift 5.1. And so it's a new feature of Swift that enables Swift UI to be really concise. And basically what they do is it's similar to like a did set closure in a property where when certain properties are set in structs and classes, or maybe just structs, then other code will run that can like hook up stuff. And so it makes it so that, for example, if you add a like a at state or at binding, things like this in front of your
Are
properties,
those reserved keywords, or are those?
they're property wrappers. So it's like it's a type. So like at binding is
Right.
that's
a reserved.
Yeah, binding and state are reserved,
Yeah.
Okay.
but you can make your own.
yeah. So with those, it basically adds a bunch of boilerplate code that you don't need to care about, but it has to be there in within the struct. But you can also make your own property wrappers so that, for example, whenever you set a property, certain code will run, or if and you can define types on there and make everything really generic. So it's similar to like a did set, but it's something that you can declare by itself and just implement it on different properties. And so I've been using one that's very useful when working with UI view controllers, and that is so a lot of times when you're developing UI view controllers, you have some properties that you don't have the initial value for until you've computed it or until it's been set by some presenting view controller. So, for example, if you're doing your card deck, or you want to view your deck of cards that you want to load up a deck of cards you've already partially reviewed that might be like stored in some place, and then you want to you have like a list of different decks. When you tap on one of the decks, it's going to go in and bring the details of that deck, and the list of decks is going to first initialize a new deck detail view controller, and then it's going to set the value for the deck that you want to display. So that's like a common master detail thing, but a lot of different ways where something's presenting another thing. And when the detail view controller is initialized, you don't have the value for that property yet. And so what you'll commonly do is you'll make the type of force unwrapped optional. And with that, you can initialize the view without having a value for it, and you just will crash whenever you if you try to access it before the value is set, but you know that in your logic it's going to be set before then. But kind of in general, usually with Swift, if you're using the force unwrapping, you're probably doing something wrong, and there's probably a better way to do it that is safer. And so with this, though, there really is no, like this specific use case, there really is no better way to do it. But if you'd like to just in general keep away from force unwrapping, just so that you know that only specific cases that you've handled are allowed, and so you kind of have a rule for yourself that you never force unwrap anything, then you can use a property wrapper, and there's a property wrapper you can write that will kind of make that kind of it's basically you're kind of, in a way, you're re-implementing optional, but you're making it as like this new type of optional. And so and then within there, basically it makes it so that you can have this property wrapper handle it for you, so that when you won't have a force unwrapped optional, but if you do try to access it, the app will crash, but it'll tell you exactly what it is, and it gives you a more useful error message, and then also it allows you to not have a force unwrapped optional, and really just say like this is a very specific case where we handle it this way. So there's blog posts about it, about this implementation of a property wrapper. It's called, and the one that I read, they called it delayed, and so it's at delayed, and that's for things that will be set like right after view did load, or even before view did load, but after initialization happens. So that's one example of a cool way you can use property wrappers. But it's very hard to explain without code examples.
One that we have been using is that we save the value in the NS user defaults. So let's say that you want some sort of information that it's going to be saved in NS user defaults. When you set it, automatically the property wrapper in the block on the set will save it, and then when you retrieve it, you will retrieve it from the NS user default as well. So that it's just like a property you can read and write very easily. That's
Very cool.
so that's
So and what key does it use when it's?
you personalize the property wrapper.
Oh, okay,
And they
cool.
knit, you pass the key. So,
That's cool. Very nice.
I forget where I saw this one, but it was similar, but it made a property validatable,
Mm-hmm.
so it had to be 4 characters or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are cool uses. And, yeah, and then once you get into how Swift UI and Combine work together, you can see why they needed to add that. You know, because it does, if you have, for example, a view with a bindable property on it, that like, it creates a publisher, I think. And then when you're in your view, you can hook into that publisher. And that way, even though your property might be a string, when you add the @bindable in it, the property wrapper actually creates a publisher with that string as its initial value.
it's something very nice also about property wrappers is this projected value that you can make it return whatever you need. So for example, we, on this, in this property wrapper that was saved to NS user defaults, we were returning a publisher. So in our data, we were able to, like, if we changed our data, it will emit the value.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the projected value, which you access by this $sign, the property. So it's
Very cool. So you're using Combine on a lot of projects?
no, this is only Swift 5.1. Oh, okay, yeah, but it is, yeah,
In your
you
company?
can,
Your project?
yes, we're returning a publisher, but you could return whatever you want, this projected value, but yeah, we're using command.
Mhm.
Using command.
Cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, I probably need to wait about a year until I can support only iOS 13, but
Yeah.
that'd be, but by then there'll also be a lot more content. So for now, I'll stick with writing meetup talks about it. Walked into the silent room. And yeah, I guess WWDC is coming up soon. A few more
They're
months.
saying it's gonna be canceled.
Maybe they can just do. I think by then they'll.
Google I/O got canceled, and Google Nextcloud got canceled.
When is that?
Nextcloud is in April 6th to 8th.
Yeah, well, that's a lot closer. I think by June, just everyone that has is worried about coronavirus will have it. So there's no more worries about spreading it by June. I think. We'll be around the world already. So, but yeah, they could just do it remotely. I just want to see the talks.
That's how most of us watch it anyway.
Yeah, just
Just
record the
videos.
talks and it's fun.
Yeah, but it's the labs,
Yeah.
where you walk in and talk to the people.
Yeah, but yeah.
How many of you are applying for a ticket?
Yeah, you can go.
Nobody?
No. What's that?
How many are applying for a WWDC ticket if it's not cancelled? I don't know.
We have to pay for it. If we do. That's the part I'm worried about.
We should make our own WWDC logo.
Yeah.
String
Yeah,
the-
you could do, I think, they don't live stream them, but they are like the same day, right?
Yeah.
So you could definitely do
They
something.
live stream this, the platform of the State of the Union
Mhm.
and the central keynote.
Yeah.
Just those two.
Yeah, they publish them fairly quickly, but even then it takes a while for like categories and searching and subtitles to come in and transcripts.
Mhm.
They try to get the video out quick.
Yeah.
But all the metadata takes some time.
Apple, for a while there, they were doing some of these, they were going on the road.
Mhm.
They were here, was it just an Apple TV
Yeah.
event? Yeah, I came to that. And I thought that was a great
One was
idea.
like 5 years ago?
Yeah.
It might have been, yeah,
It's been a long time.
yeah. And
But yeah, those are great.
I thought that they should do, that's the
Yeah.
way they should do WWDC. Instead of having one giant one, they should just travel around.
Yep. Yeah, I think that they did that year because the software wasn't ready for WWDC. So they had to delay it and do it in November, do the talks in November.
But we were working on an Apple TV app at that time, and it was like going to WWC. They
Yeah.
had engineers there.
Yeah.
And I just walked up and I said, this isn't working.
Yeah.
We-
No, it was really
We
cool.
got it solved, and that's difficult to do without face-to-face.
Yeah.
So, be nice to be able to have engineers come right to the city.
They're already here.
I guess, yeah,
They're
where I can go visit them.
Open your door.
Because they are already here. Exactly, they wouldn't have to go far.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have some complaints about iOS 13 map kit. There's some regressions that are still there.
Huh.
Yeah.
What's your problem?
So there's two issues that I have with the custom, what do they call, like basically layers, where you add your own layers on top of the map content. And the first problem was that, with iOS 12, if you had content for a certain zoom level and then you zoomed in one level past that, it would just take the asset and basically double the dimensions and use it for that next layer. And so you could kind of keep people at a certain zoom level, and then they could still pinch and zoom in, and then you can like pop them back, and there would be content as they zoomed in. It would just be a little bit less clear, but if you save a ton of just data space of the tiles content by doing that, because you need 4 times as much data for an extra layer that people don't usually even look at. But then with iOS 13, they just did, if you zoomed in, it just went blank. Like there's like no data, we just don't show anything. And so I had to re-implement basically what they did. So I created additional layers, and then I just doubled the tile size and doubled the assets, and so I basically had to re-implement that to fix it. Something that was working perfectly fine before. But then the other problem is that I'm seeing a lot of flickering of those tiles as well, to where if you move around very quickly, it like shows the asset and then doesn't show it and then shows it again. With the exact same code running on iOS 12, there's no flickering, and then switch to iOS 13 and there's flickering. And because the way that the API is designed, there's no way to like do multi-threading or something to try to maybe help with flickering. It's just the API just asks for the asset and you return it. There's no options to kind of handle anything yourself. Fortunately, if you kind of moving around slowly, like, and not going too crazy with moving around, there's no flickering. But if you're kind of if you do use it a little bit more aggressively, then you get flickering, which looks really bad.
Are there any unlucky numbers past 13? Apple should just skip them.
Yeah, just skip iOS
There are.
13. They should have just done iOS 14.
It's the worst.
But yeah, so we'll see. Is there going to be an iPhone 13?
Good question.
We have to wait.
Yeah.
Have you seen this problem with MapKit and any other apps? Like, just as a user?
No, I haven't. But most apps don't use custom tiles. All right, so I haven't seen any apps with custom tiles I can think of. Let's see. I mean, I do know of some, but not ones that I use frequently.
Mm.
Okay. See, so I know there's I think it's a Washington State Fair app that does that.
What?
you're not using the map, the map kit generic
There.
data that shows up when you ask for a map view.
There you go.
You're-
Well, I'm
you're-
using both. So I have I'm working on two apps. One app, I just completely replace the data, and then the other app, I overlay PNGs on top of the data, but same flickering in both. So looking at the Washington State Fair app, let's see what they do. Yeah, they've got the exact same issue.
Mm.
So here's their app, and so when I zoom in,
Oh,
it's like the data goes away,
yeah, that is annoying, isn't it?
and then if you move around, it's like goes away and comes back in. So, and before it had no issues.
Hmm.
And so we'll see. We'll see if they fix it eventually, but I think
Have you submitted a rate?
no, I haven't. I think actually what I really want to do is I want to do where you like a technical support incident, because it seems like but it's the only major issue I have that hasn't been resolved. So I think I will be looking at that more.
Does the committee just have the regular, like you get 2 per year, right?
I think so, yeah. So,
May as well use it.
yeah. Definitely. But yeah, so that's, everything else is good in that pick though. Still one of my favorite, uses for an app is, mapping stuff.
Yeah.
Have you done indoor mapping?
No, nothing, so like,
So like inside the buildings, like the airports and
Mhm.
the malls and the whatever?
no, I haven't worked with, do you know if they have any APIs or for that?
Yes, so now, they've had it for a while, but now I think they just have an app where you can do the map yourself, so like you just go around and do the floor plan, and then you can send that data in, and then if you have like access to, the people who own the building,
Mhm.
they can submit it, or you can submit it on their behalf. But that's the new thing, is they have this app that will allow you to record that data yourself, so people can submit their own properties using that information, but I haven't done it.
Cool. Yeah, the bigger issue with indoor mapping, or one of the standing issues, I guess, is the location data can be problems, like in malls and airports and stuff, where it kind of goes off, and if you're on multiple stories, determining which floor you're on can be
Yeah.
You're supposed to be using those beacons, right?
So
Yeah.
the beacons is one technology that they use. When you use this survey app to map your own building, it registers any sort of electromagnetic radiation that the phone
Wi-Fi.
radio.
With the indoor map stuff,
Yeah.
that's just right off Apple.
This is a great resource. There are also two WWDC videos that explain this. And they record all the Wi-Fi signals that they get, so they know where you are in your building, also which area. And I think it's going to get much better with the ultra wideband chip that they.
Hey, thanks, Dave.
Good stuff.
I know somebody that's got skills in both areas.
They've actually got sample code for the indoor map thing.
I appreciate it.
I wonder if that's what they're ready to do. They would have to use custom
going to Orlando tomorrow.
Full test,
We got a
the
real.
full test, for the real thing.
Oh,
You
yeah.
gotta go find the restrooms, is that yours?
No, it's the real today.
Oh, so it's the event weekend?
It's on Friday. Wow.
What event?
So my company, we sell theme park tickets online. It's our 20th anniversary, and so what we did is we're closing Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure in Orlando to the public, starting at 8 p.m. on Friday to 12:30 a.m. And we're selling tickets to it, so all the people that are going to be there are going to be our customers.
Oh, nice.
What's your company? I was just there last week.
Undercover Tourist.
That's your company?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the company I work
I
at.
bought tickets through you.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so we're, on Friday, we're gonna be closing both the parks after 8 p.m. And we're gonna have about 6,000 people there.
Whoa.
Yeah, instead of the usual 80,000.
There'll be no lines?
Yeah, so
Anywhere.
we're expecting very short lines, and should be fun.
That's awesome. Is it at Universal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah. And so I made a app that we're using at the check-in area. We have e-tickets that we issued, and people were going to be picking up their wristbands there. And so I designed the app to scan the e-tickets and then pull up the orders and give people their wristbands in. We haven't done any testing. Other than that. We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Wow.
Have fun with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tested the app myself. a
It's gonna
bunch,
be
but
like
we
the
haven't-
Iowa caucus again.
Oh, no.